Okay, so what we're looking at today is manipulating the formula, which basically, you can see here, we have an equation. And we have an equation because we have an equals, and we also have unknowns. And in this case, we have 3 unknowns. If I was to talk specifically about this equation here, we would say that V is the subject, meaning that I know exactly what V is equal to. V is equal to 2P plus S. When we're asked to manipulate the formula, we're really asked to maybe write one of the other unknowns right here at the start. So in this question, can we make P the subject? So have P technically on this side and everything else on the other. So that's what manipulating the formula is. It's really about rearranging. And in this question here, we're asked to rearrange this so that I know what P is equal to, not V. Okay, so my first step here would always be, well, to get basically P on its own. So here we've got a 2P, so we're going to get it on its own and we're going to get everything else to the other side. That would really be the first step. Okay, now it doesn't matter which side we have it. We can have 2P on this side and everything else here, or we can have 2P on this side and everything else there. But generally, that's what we're looking to get. So I am probably more used to having what I want on the left-hand side. So I'm going to continue that. First things first is I don't want this V here. So what I'm going to do is, in order to get rid of this V, I'm going to balance it by subtracting a V on this side. But remember, this is your equal sign, so it divides your equation in 2. And if I minus a V on this side, I must also minus a V on the other side. So currently now what I have is I will have my V and my minus V, they cancel, and I now have 0 equals 2P plus S minus V. So I'm still on that step 1, which is get what you want on its own. So essentially I want the P on this side, but of course right now it's a 2P, but let's focus on getting it on the correct side. So how I'm going to do that, it is of course a plus 2P here. So I can just minus 2P on this side of the equals and also minus 2P on this side of the equals. And so that will help me get what I want on the right side. You'll see that the plus P and the plus 2P and the minus 2P, they will cancel, and you will be left with nice and clear cut. Minus 2P equals S minus V. So you can see I've got my first step done there, which was to get what I wanted on its own. And if we go back up to the question said, write this equation in terms of P, which means we want P on one side, everything else on the other. So what have I essentially done at this point? I have not got P on its own, I have a minus 2P. So remember, the question wants me to get P on its own. So I need to get rid of this minus 2P. But you can see here that this minus 2P is attached to the P, which really we should know at this stage. That really means minus 2 multiplied by P. So the only way I can get rid of a minus 2 multiplied by P is if I divide by minus 2. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I also have to divide by minus 2 here. We'll see that that will help us on a little bit more. We will see that the multiplied by minus 2P and the divide by minus 2 cancels out, and we're just left with the P. And on this side, we're left with S minus V all divided by minus 2. And I can write that nice and neatly as S minus V all divided by minus 2. And so I've now done that first question. I have manipulated the formula. In other words, I've rearranged the formula from V equals 2P plus S. The question asked me to rearrange it in terms of P, and I've done that. And so the final answer was P is equal to S minus V all divided by minus 2. Okay, you can see here we have example 1, and we have 4 parts to this question. And this question says, make A the subject of each of the following equations, which means we want A on one side, everything else on the other. I'm going to start off with the first part, which was 4A equals N. So this is nice and easy in the sense that A is already the subject, but we're asked to get a, we're asked not to get 4a, so we need to get rid of the 4. By now, hopefully we realise that 4a really means 4 multiplied by a. So the only reason I can get, or the only way I can get rid of a 4a is if I divide by 4, and what I do to one side I must also do to the other. And so my multiplied by 4 and my divide by 4 will cancel, and I will be left with a equals n divided by 4. The second question I'm going to do there is I am going to do this part here, the fourth part, and here we are, a, this line here means divided by m equals p, and again we're asked to get a on its own, so we need to get rid of a divide by m. The only way I can get rid of a divide by m is if I multiply by m, so hopefully you're saying that with me. What I do to one side I must do to the other. My divide by m and my multiply by m, they cancel, and I'm left with a equals p multiplied by m, which is pm or mp. Okay, the next example I have here is make a the subject of the formula v equals u plus at. So again, we follow our first step, which is get what I want on its own. So I have got an at here, a u and a v. So first of all, I'm going to get rid of the v, and it's just a v on its own, so a minus v. It's a plus v, so a plus v and a minus v will cancel. What I do to one side I must do to the other, so I'm going to minus v here. My plus v and my minus v will cancel, and I'm now left with 0 equals u plus at minus v. Again, I'm looking for a, so I'm going to bring the at, I'm going to sort that out, get rid of it on this side here. It's a plus at, the only way I can get rid of it is if I minus at. So what I do to one side, I must do to the other. And I'm now left with minus at equals u. The plus at and the minus at cancel, so u minus v. And so essentially that's your first step here, third years, is to get what you're looking for, or part of what you're looking for, onto this side. Then we can focus on breaking it up. So you can see here we're asked to find a, we're not asked to find minus at. So you can see our next step here would be to get rid of the minus a part of this bit here and just be left with the t part. But obviously we know ourselves that if it's grouped together, that really means minus a multiplied by t. Or we could break it up even another bit and say it's a minus by an a by a t. And so what we actually want here is we want the a, so we want to get rid of the minus and the t. And it's a multiplied by a minus t, which means we could divide by minus t. But what we do on one side, we must do to the other, so I'm going to divide a minus t here. And you can write it like this, divide by minus t, or you can write it like this, divide by minus t, either way. And what you'll see is the minus and the minus cancel, and the t cancel, and we're now going to be left with our desired outcome, which was a equals u minus v all over minus t. And we have now written that as the subject. Okay, moving on, looking at an example where we have a square involved and what would be used there. So here we have x squared equals a divided by b, and I'm going to write x in a circle here because we want x to be the subject. So we have technically the x on one side, everything else on the other, but we have an x squared and we want to get rid of the x squared. So the only way I can get rid of an x squared is if I square root this side. But what I do to one side, I must do to the other, so I'm going to also square root this side here. And what you'll find is the square root and the square cancel, and you're left with x equals the square root of a divided by b. Likewise, if we're faced with something like this, so again, we're trying to make x the subject, so we want x on its own, everything else on the other. Here we have the square root of x plus g is equal to a. So I'll just rewrite the square root of x plus g is equal to a. And the only way we can get rid, first of all, of the x squared is if, or the square root, is if I square this side. what I do to one side, I must also do to the other, so that becomes a square. And then you will notice that the square and the square root will cancel, and you'll be left with x plus g equals a squared. And of course, we're asked to find x, so we need to get rid of the plus g. So I'm going to have a minus g on this side and a minus g on this side. They will cancel, and I'm left with x equals a squared minus g as my final answer. Okay, I want everyone to ensure that they have taken accurate notes on this video. All the examples are written down, and once that's done, you can complete activity 1 for me. Keep an eye out for video 2. Once that's up, you will be able to complete activity 2 as well.